Anything else AI related? Salesforce just related this new tool. I'm not totally sure. It has something to do with being able, it's called Walt. It has something to do with like web tools of some sort. I have not dug into it. I just saw it on my timeline earlier today. So maybe Walt's cool. We'll find out how cool Walt actually ends up being. And then, all right, we can get at least started. Oh, okay, Axis here, awesome. Who else do we have? Timothy Black, that is quite the name. Timothy Black, are you new? You're on mute.
I've been in the group like for 6 weeks or so, but this is my first call.
Cool. What brought you to AI Profit Boardroom and to the coaching calls?
Just trying to set up, trying to pivot our agency a little bit to do more AI automation. And I've actually got a lawyer client on the hook, and I'm just trying to figure out how to set this all up, what she needs for her practice. So, but she's all for it. I just need to come back with a number and the confidence to get it set up. So, you know,
confidence. I mean, you're the only person who can give yourself confidence, right? I love this.
Yes.
If you believe you can or you believe you can't, you're right either way, right?
Yep, exactly right.
And so I think that having some amount of knowledge gets you just stay kind of ahead of your clients. What are you trying to build automations in N8N?
Well, that's the thinking. I've been chatting back and forth with Perplexity and ChatGPT, just trying to get an idea of how this would work. So just it's like intake and OCR and being able to summarize docs for her. And I've got like I have her flow of how she does things, and she just wants to automate it. So I would assume N8N is the way to go. Hook in with her, and that's what I was going to ask if anybody's done anything like this, or because they use Clio for their CRM. Clio is a very popular legal software CRM. So I just want to be able to hook that into N8N and start doing these automations for her.
I mean, I've been finding out just doing more of this, like how many different CRMs there are. Like I knew of HubSpot, like people use that one, Salesforce, and then man, they have CRMs. I feel like for every niche that are sort of tailored to those. OCR, so I love Google Vision's OCR. There's a simple API that you can do. You do need to get into the Google Cloud platform, but something like Perplexity or GPT can probably walk you through that. And then their Vision OCR, like you get to use it for free to start, essentially, and it's pretty powerful. The only thing about it, and I don't know if this is a plus or a minus, is it does every single word individually, and so you do need to factor that in when it's taking the information in. However, when I do, one of the cool things that you can do now is do OCR, use Google Vision for the OCR, get that really accurate information, and then pass that along to an LLM agent for it to then sort of bundle it up properly and format it so that it looks good and however you want to send it down the line. And then Clio, N8N may not have a native node for that, but you can use an HTTP node probably to connect to its API, as long as it must have an API that you can connect to. And then have you tried the new prompt to workflow feature?
Have not.
Give it a try. So you need to update your N8N platform to the newest version. And then when you start a workflow, it will give you the option of, instead of just create a workflow, you can create your workflow from, have AI do it. You get 50 credits, basically 50 interactions with the workflow generator. So like it'll generate a workflow, then it's not going to be right the first time, of course, but then you can go back and forth with it. In a previous coaching call and this week, I basically demonstrated, and in the last two coaching calls, I guess I demonstrated it. And in the demonstration showed both that it's really cool and nifty, and also it is buggy and will not give you exactly what you want. However, part of that can be, and this is just inherent to the process, improper design of your workflow when you start. And when I was doing those demos, one of the things I did was first kind of talk through with Perplexity or GPT your idea for the workflow, kind of go back and forth with them, and then have them generate a prompt for you. The prompt can only be 1,000 characters, and so that's a limitation to put on it. Hey, generate me a prompt for the prompt to workflow system in N8N. Make sure it's less than 1,000 characters, and then that'll give you a good starting point. And then one thing I want to start playing with a little bit more is, instead of using up all my credits in N8N for it to update the workflow, is potentially just ask one of the LLMs, hey, I got this as an error, what do you suggest I do? And tinker around with it myself first before I try to have the limited credits in N8N fix it. But it could definitely get you started. And I believe N8N is a great way to sort of show a POC of these tools, especially if they're just going to use them internally. But that's what I would suggest to do.
That's good. Well, I need to figure out N8N as well, because I've not done that yet either. I've not gotten into it. I just figured that was the way to go.
Try prompt to workflow. That'll definitely get you started a lot faster than just doing it from scratch yourself.
Okay, cool.
Better than also just asking an LLM to generate the workflows for you. They are not as good as prompt to workflow, at least.
Very good.
Cool. All right.
Thank you.
No problem. Ross Pittman, I feel like I can't tell. You're either new or you're new-ish. You're new. Okay. Not even just new-ish, but you're new. But you are still on mute. And so if you want to take yourself off mute, let me know what brought you to AI Profit Boardroom and to the coaching calls. If you want. Yep. If you want, you can also just throw it in the chat if you don't want to take yourself off mute. It does give us a little bit of idea. And then I am probably going to butcher this name. I'll give it a try. Addy, ADE. I feel like maybe you're new. If you want, you can take yourself off mute. And let me know what brought you to AI Profit Boardroom and what brought you to the coaching calls. If not, you can just drop it in the chat or just ignore me. That's like the best solution. The recent, I saw that the quantum computer breakthrough. As you worried about BTC, nothing serious in the short term, but 5 years from now. I guess, right? Like if they have a quantum computer, then it could potentially break the chain. I do wonder like how, I mean, if you've seen those things, they're not fitting on your desktop as far as I can tell, but I guess if somebody, I mean, if it was worth enough, right, then they could just destroy the blockchain unless they come up with another solution. I wonder if it would only, because Bitcoin is proof of work, right? Is there any worry for proof of stake or the other blockchains? And then do we need to start just shifting to proof of stake for all the blockchains? And I don't think you can do that with Bitcoin, right? Because nobody controls Bitcoin at all, right? Nobody even knows theoretically who's behind it. Maybe it's Jack Dorsey. It's definitely not the guy who claimed to be behind it and then got brought to court and turned out he wasn't behind it. So yeah, quantum computers. But I mean, if you're able to break Bitcoin with quantum computers, we're in trouble on a lot of fronts, right? Cybersecurity wise, if they're able to do that, what else is available? Okay, so today, if nobody else wants to jump on, well, hold on, let me just check. We just had some new people get in here. Elsa, Georgetta, and Kat. Kat, are you new to AI Profit Boardroom or to these coaching calls? You can either take yourself off mute or...
Yes, hi, everyone.
How's it going?
Yeah, good. How are you? It's my first call, and I'm very new. I think less than 24 hours in the AI Profit Room.
Okay. What brought you to the AI Profit Boardroom and what brought you to the coaching calls?
I've been following Julian for a while, not too long, maybe like 4 or 5 weeks or something like this, and also been in his free group. And I think I finally had so many question marks in my head and, was doing myself the favor to finally join the paid program, and started watching last night some of the videos and already feel much better, I must say. So
what are you trying to use AI and automation for? Like, are you trying to use it for your work or are you trying to provide it for your clients?
Well, I've been working as a digital marketer, and I really hate social media. Probably shouldn't say that, but
I mean, it is probably terrible for us, right? Like it is one of the worst drugs out there that people take is social media.
And I mean, it's just like the speed, and every day it's like you're being bombarded, and I'm more the strategist, the concept girl. I'm really good with solutions and using all different tools, and the promotion on social media has never been really, my cup of tea. So I figured actually if I can automate that, that would be really helpful. And I love the idea of, AI automation and optimizing workflows and, freeing up time for me and my clients. And that's why I want to do the automation. So I basically want to help, micro businesses and entrepreneurs to automate stuff that they really hate doing and that they don't need to do, because AI is sometimes even better at doing them. And that's why I want to, get started setting up these automations for myself, first of all, and then obviously also, reaching out to people and see who needs help and who wants to automate what.
Okay, great. And, so I guess I don't want to say, like, I was in a similar position. I used to work for a influencer marketing company, but then really did not, I don't know, watch much influencer content. I mean, I know like younger people love influencer content. I was never like that big into it, but I bring this up to everybody on the call often, is that, you know, like if you're trying to start a social media channel from scratch, it's great that we have AI and automation that can help you. It's still going to take a while, right? It probably takes, you know, it takes years to, when you see all these people who are doing really well, like even, you know, Mr. Beast posted, you know, his journey, I think recently. Obviously he's making, I don't know, billions of dollars, I feel like, at this point in time off of social media and influencer marketing. But when he first started off, like he would have years where he was getting very, very few views, and then he just kept going and going. But that is the point of AI and automation, is that, you know, sticking out, like posting continuously for years regularly is very difficult. Like most people cannot do it, but using AI automation is great. However, I do think that it's the type of thing where you do need to like fine tune it a little bit as you're going along. Don't just put together an entire pipeline and then just let it run. Like really test to see what kind of posts is the AI generating. Does it make sense? And, you know, just have it like dumping them into a Google Sheet at first to verify them yourself. Give feedback to your prompting system. And then once you're getting posts that you are happy with, then allow it to just automatically upload them. But, you know, maybe stay human in the loop to start and then get it off and going. We may do a social media. We did one previously. I might try to do another one again, because I feel like it is pretty useful for everybody. Even if you're not a social media manager or you're not in that space, we could all have better socials. I have one now that I'm running on LinkedIn that I think is pretty good, where I actually post all of my stuff by hand, but I have it auto commenting for me. And I have it doing like 30 to 40 comments a day. And that's something where, like, if I were to actually have to do it, it would take me probably an hour or two, and now it takes me 5 seconds to do. But it took a while to refine it to that level to get something that was useful.
Can I ask you something, like for the LinkedIn automation that you just mentioned, like the commenting, is the AI commenting on your behalf on other posts?
Yep.
Okay, so you instructed it to search
so
for specific posts or profiles? Or?
Exactly. So what it does is it goes through it logs into my LinkedIn account. It goes through my timeline. It extracts out posts that are AI and generative AI related, and it skips posts that are like ads essentially and more promotional, although it does sometimes get some promotional ones. And then it logs like the author and the link to the post and then the content of it. And then it passes it to another. This is not done through N8N. This is actually Python code. And then it goes and it has GPT create all the comments for it and save it into a text file. I then go in and just check them to make sure they're not terrible. One thing it does have a little trouble with sometimes is that if somebody, like sometimes on LinkedIn, it'll put like at the top that like somebody commented on the post or they liked the post, and it'll read that name and it thinks that that's the author's name. And so I'll spend a minute basically checking to make sure the names are right whenever it uses names. And then sometimes I'll just go through it really quickly and just delete all the names just because I don't feel like dealing with it. So if it says, "Hi, Anthony, you know, I really, you know, was interested in what you just posted," I'll just go through and just delete the name and just do, "Hi, I'm really interested in what you posted." And then I have another script and it just takes all of the comments, all of the links to the posts, it logs in again, and then it comments. It does not just like go boom, 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 comment. It comments and then waits 30 seconds and then comments again and 30 seconds. I highly suggest that if you're doing something where you're doing something like that with a commenting system, don't have it do all the comments back to back to back to back. Have it spend time in between them. And yeah, I feel like posting is one thing, which is great, but really if you want to grow your social media channel, it is commenting on other people's posts, right? Because especially early on LinkedIn, it'll show me my actual LinkedIn posts won't get that many impressions. Like I am just, you know, not in the algorithm enough at this point in time where they're giving me that number of impressions. But my comments, it'll also show you how many impressions your comments get. And like one of my comments last week got like 40,000 impressions. It's like, okay, like that's better than, but it's not always, right? Like some of the comments get a couple hundred impressions or whatever. But I do feel like, you know, that's a good hack to build your social media account, is doing that commenting. And that's the part that is even more boring. You know, than posting one post a day or 5 posts a day. That's one thing. Commenting on 40 people's posts, that's a lot. Okay. So that's social media commenting. Today, we have been doing a lot of vibe coding talk. And so I have a presentation about vibe coding. I am sharing it in the chat right now if you want to have a copy of it. And then also here, I might as well just send this to Vic since he's going to ask me for it so that he has access for it. So when he posts this recording, and so this is basically a vibe coding guide. Essentially, I think that if you've been on the calls before, I probably need to stop referring to the fact that I say things over and over again, because I do say the same things over and over again. But you know, one of my favorite phrases, we all got keys to Ferraris, none of us know how to drive. That is vibe coding, right? Where we now have the ability to create any, basically any application you want, if you really stick it out and put all the pieces together. You can build, you know, roughly anything. You know, it's not simple. It's not just say one prompt and you'll get an entire application out of it. I know that you'll see things on your timeline that say that. It's like, oh, this 3-year-old kid put one prompt in and he got an application out of it that's worth $3 million. And it's like, okay, sure, I guess. But for most of us, that's not going to happen. However, I am also like to say, it's like, hey, you shouldn't dive right into any of these things. It's great that we have these tools and that they can automate things for us and make it easier, but you should still use best practices and plan things out. And so I think that this is a good guide. And I will say that, like, sometimes when I show these presentations or these guides, I will be fairly upfront with like, yeah, I'm kind of messy or sloppy and I don't always do this stuff. This one, I will say that, like, when I do vibe coding for my projects, I stick to this stuff fairly strong, like, I don't know, strictly or strongly or regimentedly. My prompting, you know, I did one about prompting last week. Yeah, sometimes when I'm really on it, I definitely use good prompting strategies. Sometimes I'm a little bit more messy. When I am consulting with clients, we did one about that. And you know, I sometimes try to use best practices and then sometimes get a little too casual and then wish I had always stuck to my best practices. With the vibe coding stuff, at this point, after having used these techniques often enough, I really stick to a lot of these principles and practices, because if you don't, it's just a waste of time, and you know, you just have to go back and do it anyway. And so since you're going to end up doing it anyway, you might as well start off doing it. Okay. Let me make sure I'm ready to go. And then today's vibe coding presentation was put together with Gamma. And I'll say I liked the GenSpark presentations a little bit better. Maybe I should have prompted the Gamma a little bit better, but I feel like, whereas I like GenSpark, at least this is where I'm at now, I like GenSpark more for presentations, and I like Gamma better for documents. Like if you're going to do a report or something that is you know, regular page size, I feel like I'm kind of shifting that way. But maybe I could be prompting my system a little bit better than that. Anyway, that's just a little behind the scenes. This one is from what was it? The design of this is all from Gamma. Okay, so vibe coding, collaborating with AI for creative development. I really want to highlight that collaborating. You should be working with the AI. You should be having a back and forth with it. You know, have AI at times be a teacher or a mentor, or it's also your junior, you know, but try to have a dialogue with it. And then even if, again, like some of the vibe coding solutions like Cursor or Claude Code or some of these other ones are in your IDE, that's cool and you can use that. But I do suggest, especially if you are, I feel like a lot of the people in this call, where I know we have some people who have done software engineering before, and they're vibe coding, and it's just like a tool for them. But then I know there's other folks on here who've never done any Python coding before, or JavaScript, or whatever you're doing, and so they're just diving right into it. I feel like especially for you, you should be having the AI teach you as you go, give you, like, you're giving it feedback, it's giving you feedback, challenge it on its ideas, and really be, have this collaborative system with it. So vibe coding means, so this is a creative and conversational. So I feel like that's, again, the best way to go. Less prompt engineering and more flow engineering. So essentially, you're not just creating these specific prompts, but like this is more dynamic, where you are, again, not just prompting it as much as conversationally flowing along with it. This should be, you can have guided collaboration, so it can help shape, debug, and refine, right? So like, again, it has all these functionalities to them, but you have to ask it, right? So it can help you shape your ideas, right? Like, here, this is my idea. What do you think about it? Tell me why it's not going to work. Tell me why it is going to work. Like, really, put it to challenge you a bit and to show you how to make your project better or where the flaws are going to be. And then debugging, it's pretty good with debugging. Again, like my choice is to use the Claude web interface. And it's fairly useful at debugging. But sometimes you may notice is it will get into these weird loops where it gets stuck, and you can tell where it's like, hey, I just ran this file, I got these errors. You give them the errors. A lot of times what I'll just do is I'll run a file. Either it runs well, which is great, or it just gives me a bunch of errors, and then I'll just copy and paste those errors and give it back to Claude. And then anything else maybe I notice where it's like, oh, no, I ran this and I could see visually that this went wrong and this went wrong, and then here are the errors that I'm getting in the console, what's going on. And then if you do that and you're getting the same errors like 2 or 3 times, and then you notice that like when you're updating your code, it doesn't really look like the number of lines of code are changing. It is possibly in one of these weird like loops that it gets into. And a lot of times what I have to do is just tell it, hey, no, start from scratch with this file, like based on this, because whatever it's got going on, it can't get out of that debug loop, and it's just not fixing it for whatever reason, and it keeps telling you it is. So that happens, I would say, 3% of the time. Hey, oh,
I got a little drop for you since you brought that up. So I use pretty much everybody. Claude, Google, mention it. I mean, I've been here a minute, so I mess around with this stuff a lot. But when that happens, and it happens a lot, it's not that it's in a loop, it's just hallucinating. So it's just lying to you all the time. So what you got to remember is it's usually going to lie to you. So what you do is you let it know right off the bat. It's like, number 1, stop lying. 2, be brutally honest. And then 3, ask the AI to question itself. Is this the best code you can produce? You're telling me you can't find the answer, and I guarantee you, it'll break out of it. That's how I break. Usually I break them out of that routine. It's like children, they get fixated in a thought, and they just want to emphasize that thought to the end. It's just break. It's a psychological game. You almost got to play with the machine.
So I try to do something similar where I'm like, hey, what's going on? Like, we have run into the same problem over and over again. It does not seem like you're fixing it. But I will try that one where you're saying, tell it, stop lying to me, is essentially what it is.
Yeah. I basically say, stop lying to me, be brutally honest, go back through your code, right? Analyze it and tell me, is this the best way you can solve this problem, right? And then if it says yes, it's just like, well, give me 3 alternatives. And it will try to figure out other ways, and it's just breaking that loop.
Yeah, and essentially, again, like, this is the point that he's bringing up is something that is useful for all of us. Is when you're doing this, it's like, you can't always just go along with what it's saying. Like, you do have to push back, and like sometimes not being like, before you get to the point before you just start like typing in a bunch of swear words and curse words into your, because that, you'll start to feel that way when it's going wrong, and you're deep into it. Be a little bit aggressive, be a little bit more forward, like, hey, what's going on here? You're lying to me. I need you to really figure out a solution here. Sometimes I'll tell it, start from scratch because you're not figuring this out. What's really the best way to do this? And then even in a less aggressive way, when you're starting off, that's also a good like sanity check. That's another term you can use with it, is sanity check. Like, hey, dude, do a sanity check right now. Does this make any sense? Like, are there problems here? Don't just go along with it. Like, whatever plan it comes up with first, like, again, like if you're like, hey, generate a roadmap for me, go and look through that roadmap, see if it makes sense to you, for one thing. And then even still, just be like, okay, hey, this roadmap looks great. What's wrong with it? Like, fix it. Like, do your own sanity check. Make sure that this makes sense. And if it starts to find out a bunch of problems, then it's like, okay, it's good that I asked that. Sometimes they ought to be like, no, man, this was great. It's like, okay, like if you double checked it and you think it's good, then we're good. And then this also goes like refine, which is what we just said, is like really try to refine it. Goal, build code that's clean, modular, and fun to create. Now, the fun to create one, we'll see. Like, I mean, that depends on your project. What I will do is tell you is when you start off on your project, those are clean and modular are two good terms to use when you're asking it to come up with an idea. It's like, hey, I want you to do clean, modular. You can also use the term dry. Dry works very well. Code. And one thing you want to stay away from is, for the most part, if a Python file you're working on is getting to be more than 1,000 lines of code, that is too big. And probably there's some people on the code who are on the call who are like, nah, it shouldn't even be 1,000. It should be more like 600. You do not want to put everything in one Python file. Like, that is not the way that other people do this. As much as possible, you want to break these things up into multiple different Python files. I'm going to keep saying Python today. You can do whatever language you want, but a lot of these projects are done in Python, and that is going to be at least the shorthand I'm going to use today. It could be JavaScript, it could be HTML, it could be whatever you want, C++. But you don't want to have one gigantic file that has everything in it. As much as possible, you want to start breaking things up into multiple files and potentially into multiple folders, depending on, you know, the size of your project. One thing you can do is, when you first conceptualize what the app is and you've told it, hey, make this clean, make this dry, make this modular, you know, abstract away functionality into other files. These are all good things to tell the system up front. You can also ask it, hey, what are these best practices? What should I put into my prompt when I am trying to prompt a system to generate an application? And it'll give you all these things I'm saying right now. And then you use that. Once it creates your entire folder structure and file structure and everything, one of the things I do is I tell, okay, now create a setup file that will set up all of these folders, all of my files, and just booms, because it's going to take you like sometimes maybe half an hour to an hour to set up all these folders and files. It will just create a setup file, download that setup file, run the setup file, and it sets up everything up for you. And then from there, you can have like a good foundation to start building off of and things like that. Okay. Vibe coding is a duet. You bring the direction, the AI brings the momentum. I think that's a really good way of looking at it. These two guys over here that are playing, you know, virtual guitars. The guy on the left, maybe they're ladies, right? I don't know. I think I like his style better. The one on the right, I don't know what he's doing. Treat AI as a partner, not as a tool. I think that's a great way of looking at this. Keep your curiosity and critical thinking balanced. Like, you know, let this bring out some of your curiosity and critical thinking. Like, don't just, again, go along with this thing is saying. It is a great tool, but you are in charge. It's not in charge. And you want to make sure that you are getting your project to be the best it can be. And so you do need to push back. Let structure and intuition coexist. I really like that. Why structure matters before flow. You need a roadmap. I really highly suggest it. Like, that's one of the things, it's a term that we use in software development. Ask it for a roadmap. And then one of the things that I do, and this will come up later as well, is I take that roadmap and then I put it into project knowledge. And then if I get a POC for a project and I have the core functionality ready to go, I take all of those Python files and I throw that into project knowledge also, so that it has that and it understands, okay, this is what I have as my POC, and then we're building other files on top of these. If we have to go in and change any of those files for the POC just for new functionality, then I will delete it out of project knowledge and update it with a new version of that file. A clear plan makes AI output coherent and helps you avoid prompt spaghetti. Essentially, this is what we've been talking about, where you're just getting, nonsense. So set up core logic, testing, deploying it, right? So that's what I was saying. You can have the system do your setup for you. Your core logic is basically the AI applications. The other thing you can do is ask it to do unit tests or test files for all your files, right? So what it'll do is it'll generate a file that will test out each one of your files, right? And so again, like you won't have just one Python file for everything, most likely. You'll have, say, 6, maybe 12, maybe 50 or 100, right? But as you're building it, get one file, right, that does one core piece of work, and then tell it, create a unit test for this, create a test file for this, and then you run that test file and it tests out that file to make sure it's working. And then you keep on doing that with each individual file that you add, and boom, boom, boom. Now you've tested out all your files, and then most likely you are going to have an orchestrator or a pipeline file of some sort that basically manages all functionality in all of your different files. Basically, it's like the core brain, and everything else is the different tools that it's using. And then finally, deployment. There's all kinds of different ways to deploy. Most likely, if you're getting into deployment, you might need to containerize, or you're creating this and turning it into an API. For deployment, you might need to alter your files so that they can be deployed. Something like taking all your regular functions and making them async, something like that. But once you have the core functionality and you have your POC, and you're getting closer to your MVP, again, these are tasks that AI is really good with helping you with. Work on one module, focus on one module at a time. Don't try to do everything. And as I said, each file does one thing well. Essentially one thing well, maybe it's a cluster of 5 things, right? But like it serves one set of functionality, right? So like if you have, say, like we were talking before about this legal automation, right? And then there's an OCR portion, and then there's an LLM agent that takes in that OCR information. These are 2 separate files, essentially, if you were to do this in Python, right? Or think about your nodes in N8N, right? Like these would all typically be, say, a lot of times one Python file, and look at it like that. This reduces confusion and simplifies debugging, right? And so instead of having to force the LLM to debug one gigantic file, which is going to be a problem. Like if you have, say, a 3,000 line code Python file, that is going to be difficult. If you have instead 20 files that are 400 lines each, then it's going to be easier to debug the functionality of that actual file. This is just a better structure for things to be running in. So like in this example where you have data loader, model trainer, app.py. So like a lot of times you will have like app.py, pipeline.py, something like that, where you have this one central file that is really calling all the other files to have them do things. Meaningful names. So user auth.py, or as we said, like model trainer. Usually it's a lot of lowercase with, what's that? That's not a I forget what that's called. It's not a hyphen, whatever that thing is. Underscores between them. Consistent indentation, 4 spaces per level. That's just a typical thing. Comments and doc strings. So you do, like a lot of the AI LLMs right now will do auto commenting, but this is also something you should do is for your own purposes is tell it to, make sure it's doing comments and doc strings. Also, you can ask it to create a README markdown file that you should keep in there. That's just good practice. And again, that README file can be a good way for the LLM to have a quick reference. Again, store that README file in your project knowledge so it knows what your project is and can always refer to that. Keep code dry, don't repeat yourself. So that's dry, don't repeat yourself. Essentially, that's so when I was saying dry before, essentially what that means is you don't want to keep on doing the same thing. You don't want to have the same code that's doing the same thing over and over and over again. Essentially, you would want to create one function that does that task, and then have the different portions of the code that need that task to be done to just call that function or call that class or something like that. Again, this is something to just tell the LLM up front, like, hey, make sure that the code is dry. It usually does dry code in general. And then sometimes what I'll do is get my POC ready to go, get closer to my MVP, and then at some stage there, be like, hey, how can we make this more modular? How do we make this more dry? How do we make this more clean? Is our logging good? How's our error handling? That's another good one. And these different things can make sure that you're getting closer and closer to good functional code. As I said, small functions instead of big blobs. The same thing, like small functions instead of gigantic functions when you can, and then the same thing with like smaller files instead of one big giant file. Save often and use Git. So potentially, if you're doing Git, it is a CI/CD system. You don't really need to do Git necessarily if you're just doing your own vibe coding projects yourself. Like if you are, working with GitHub and you want to put your project on there, then you'll be using Git. If you're working on a bigger project with a bunch of other people, you're potentially using Git. And really, so Git is just a way to like have different versions of your project in your IDE, and then it's like you can switch between different branches when you're changing things. If it's not needed, I will tell you, kind of getting into the Git world is just like a whole nother thing to start to worry about. And so if you don't need it, don't necessarily go down that path. And then also Git is a whole nother level of frustration. Sometimes there's Git goblins. You have to watch out for the Git goblins. And so if it's not really, part of the pipeline or system you're working on, don't necessarily worry about Git as much. Save often though, for sure. I'm basically saving every time I do updates. I think that also it's like there is, when I'm kind of using the Claude interface and then say, here, debug this for me, and it gives me a new version, I have to copy and paste that new version into the file and then save it, for it to run. So I feel like inherently my sort of that back and forth does save it often. I think that, and especially if you're going to test things out, to test anything out, you need to save it first. Virtual environments. Okay, so again, if you're new, if you're seasoned veteran or you've been doing coding for a while, you know this already. But if not, if you're newer, so this is something that what you're going to do. Essentially, the idea is that a lot of these applications that we're building are run and use libraries of some sort, right? And this is, if you hear me talking about the dependencies, this is the same type of thing. A lot of times we're using PyTorch or Hugging Face, or OpenAI has a library, LangChain has a library. All these people have libraries. What you don't want to do is just install the libraries and the dependencies computer-wide, essentially system-wide on your computer. And the reason is because there are different versions, and this is like the worst part, the different versions of these different libraries. So like if you see here, OpenAI, Flask, and when you get all of your stuff to work on your one application, it could all work with one set of versions for this. So like in this example, it's like, okay, like I could get something and it's working with OpenAI 1.3, Flask 3.0, PyTorch 22 point whatever, OS, all these different libraries, right? And then I have another version, I have another program on my file, or I have another application in my files, and it actually uses OpenAI 2.0, it uses Flask 4.2, and it's set up to use those new function names, those new variables, all those different things. And so if I start cross-contaminating them, then they will just start throwing errors. There's going to be all these different problems. So what you do is, and this is going to be different depending on your platform. So this one, I think this works well on a Mac, but if you were to do this on a PC, it's different. Either way, you can just ask your LLM, hey, I need to create a virtual environment and I need to also activate it. So that's the first line, is creating your virtual environment. And the second one is activating it. I'm pretty sure, so on PC, you don't have source. You just, I think, just do the rest of that without it. And then you'll see there's going to be this new folder called env in your directory, and then it's going to store all the libraries and dependencies in there, and then it's going to refer to those and use those in just that application, on not all the applications you have. And then this is also good, you know, when you go and you deploy this, that like it does need to have those specific dependencies and those versions of those dependencies, and you're going to want to essentially lock those in. A lot of times what we do is require what it says here, you have a requirements.txt file. So this is just a text file. It'll have your dependencies very similar to this, like OpenAI equals 1.3.0, or sometimes you'll just do OpenAI. That's much more sloppy. But then you can just have it install those. And again, you can have the LLM provide you with the requirements.txt file. You should be asking it to do that. And then you just copy and paste it into that file, run the pip install for it, and then boom, you have all your libraries and everything set up. But first, again, you want to create your virtual environment, and then you want to run the requirements.txt file. And then as you're building your project, if you find that like you have new dependencies and libraries that you need, you know, pip install those, and then just copy and paste whatever that new library or dependency is into your requirements.txt file, just so that you keep updating it, so that if you do need to deploy it or do anything with it, you still have all of those dependencies in your requirements file. So unit testing, this is what I was saying before. You can write simple tests as you build. Ask the LLMs to generate these for you. Once you have a working file, this is something that LLMs can do fairly well, is generate the unit test. Usually they will use this library PyTest. A lot of times it's using PyTest to do these tests, and essentially it is testing out and making sure that this file works before you move on. You can get these going fairly quickly, and this is, again, just good practice. Don't just put together 6 files and then, you know, and then an app file and a pipeline file or whatever, and run them, and they're not working, and it's like, oh, what's going on here? Get a file, run a unit test on it, make sure it works. Get another file, run a unit test on it, make sure it works. Another file, unit test, another file, unit test. Just do that. It sounds boring and tedious, but so is debugging and running into a bunch of frustrating problems down the line. Logging, this is another thing that you want to do. Logging basically just you know, tells you what's going on, the processes that are going on, and also like errors that you're having. This is just something else to you know, prompt the AI to do. Hey, provide me with good logging. Or again, if you're just doing your POC off the bat, and it's a fairly simple project, see what it does, like just let it do whatever, and then before you're getting, like, as you're getting to your MVP stage or you're getting closer to a deployment, be like, hey, go through here, make sure my logging and error handling is good, and then it'll rewrite these files to just include more logging and error handling. LLM tools, right? So as I brought up, you have the different web interfaces, ChatGPT, GPT-5 web interfaces, Claude, and then the IDE assistants, Replit, Cursor, Windsurf, Copilot. So these are real time in your IDE. As I've said, I like to just go with Claude. But I do a bunch of copying and pasting. It is, I feel like there's probably maybe a more efficient way for me to do this, where I do some aspect of it in Claude, then I bring it into my IDE, and then like Cursor, you know, have its fun. Whatever works for you. But again, I feel like, especially if you're newer, having that agentic back and forth conversation with Claude in the interface, or GPT, although I feel like Claude is better, but it's whatever is working better for you and fits your style. But having that back and forth in the web interface, I think there's a lot of benefit to that. So yeah, using project knowledge, I brought this up. So store your core files when you get them. Like, hey, like these are the core files, they're not really changing that much. Boom, and like you can put those in project knowledge. Upload modules and roadmaps so the LLM stays aware. So like when it creates a README, when it creates a roadmap, anything like that. Because as you're working on this project, if this is a big enough project, you are not going to be able to stay within the same chat. You're going to have to move from chat to chat to chat. And because you're doing that, you know, I guess Claude now has memory. I just wouldn't rely on that from one chat to the next, essentially. And you don't want to keep uploading your Python files and your roadmaps and all that stuff every single time you get into a new chat. But sticking them into project knowledge will save you some tokens, and so you're not burning them all up in that specific chat. And again, yeah, so it helps maintain continuity across sessions, right? Because if your project is big enough, you are not going to stay in one session. And so having this core project knowledge so that it has a reference is possibly the only way to go from session to session. Yeah. And then building a roadmap. Ask AI to outline phases and files, approve and refine the plan, implement one file at a time, update the roadmap as you progress, reevaluate architectural periodically. So this is that like conversational, like working with it, collaborative concept, right? And this is a slide I would say that I'm not as happy with, that I think Gamma could have done better. I feel like GenSpark might have made this slide look nicer, but this is what we get. But yeah, like go through these steps. I think these are pretty good steps to use. And I, for the most part, stick to this myself. I have done enough projects vibe coding with AI where it's like, once you start deviating too far from this plan is when you start having issues and you pull out all your hair, just like me, right? Challenge your AI partner. Don't accept the first answer. I mean, sometimes accept the first answer. You don't want to be like too difficult with this, but for bigger concepts, for sure, a lot of times, maybe I'll let it put together the POC, and then when it's done, challenge it, ask what it could do to make this better. As Alex was saying, is this the best technique? Show me alternatives. What could break this? Like, these are good questions to ask and to challenge the system. And if it's like, no, this is the best technique, here's alternatives, but this is the best one to use, or no, edge cases cannot break this. It's like, okay, cool. Or it'll show you all these different weaknesses. And again, this is the type of stuff that when they say, I brought this up before, AI is making people stupider, right? Essentially, that's what they say. The MIT ran these brain scans, and people's like critical thinking is decreasing because they're using ChatGPT. For some people, sure. If you're doing this back and forth and really kind of like learning from AI, this is going to make you smarter, right? Have AI work with you to make you more functional, not less functional. You don't need to overshare. If you put way too much into your project knowledge, it can be confusing. So you do have to be a little bit, cautious with that. Use summaries instead of massive code dumps, if you can. Especially again, like what I was saying, like use the READMEs. Be somewhat aware of your context window for your tokens as much as you can. Don't just drop in everything if you don't have to. Try to keep it focused and accurate. So like, again, like it can handle a lot of content and code, but the more focused you can be, the better. This file handles Twitter scraping with Selenium. Yeah, sure. Version control basics. And again, this is if you're doing Git. You have to be ready for Git. You don't really need to do it necessarily. I've used Git before. I use it when I'm working on bigger projects for teams. I think that's where it's more necessary. I feel like if you're new, this might be just another thing that is going to add a level of complexity that you don't necessarily need just yet. But if possibly you get to the point where you're deploying things, then yes. And essentially what this does is it allows you to create branches or new versions of your work. And so until you get to that MVP, it's not as necessary to do, but then once you deploy, then start using Git and GitHub. Essentially, that's where the GitHub comes from. Have the LLM walk you through it. It is not intuitive of how it does updates and version control. So you may want to ask it, like, how are you doing this? Like, how does it work? Because it's a little bit more different than you think. And do watch out when you are doing GitHub commits, when you are pushing things to GitHub, when you are pulling things from GitHub, try to back things up, because especially if you have to if there are merge conflicts, things can go bad. The GitHub goblins can get you when you're having merge conflicts. And so it's a good idea to have backed up that version of what you have, because once those merge conflicts hit and the Git goblins get into your work, then you are going to be happy that you have backups, or you have ways to roll back to your, and they do have internal ways to roll back, but I always like to be extra safe when I am using Git. I just, whenever I like have had some bad experiences with it, and I'm like, okay, thank God, or thank whoever, thank the universe that I had another backup. Yeah, and the same thing, you know, you want to have this modular design, easier testing, easier for AI-driven refactoring. Each thing handles one responsibility. So again, like you have scraper, content gen, scheduler, reply manager. These are all good names for your files, and you see how one does one thing, one does another thing, one does another thing, one does another thing. Now they have multiple functions within those files, but you really want to keep things modular, at least at that level, where it's like this has one structure. Let AI write tests and debug with results, right? Write tests for scheduler.py, run them locally, paste failures back to AI for fixes, right? This is essentially a good system to be running, and then do the same thing again. You know, like if there's any failures, then run it, run it, see if there's any failures, update the test or update the file, whatever it needs. Sometimes the test is wrong, like it created a bad test and it needs to write a better test. And then sometimes the file itself is wrong. You just need to figure that out. End each session with a state of the code note. So one thing, and this is tough, but like what I will try to do is, especially if I have a really big project, is if I know that we're getting closer to the end of the context window on that session, I will ask it to give me a current update of where we're at with everything, and then I bring that into project knowledge. It's a little bit tough because sometimes you push it right up against the edge. What I'll say is if you can start to get a sense of how long your sessions can last, and then just cut them off early, or like break them up into manageable sessions. Like GPT, I don't know if it does, it just gets slower and slower, which is kind of the nicest thing. Claude will just cut you off, but if you're like, nope, we're done, the session's over, you used up your context window, and then you can't get something out of it. And so if you can, do it in stages and then ask it like, hey, do this, or I'll burn a session. Essentially, I'll set up another session, I'll give it everything I have lately, tell it to do a state of the code, then go to another session and use that as my new session that I'm going to, because I've already probably burnt up a bunch of tokens in that one session. I want a clean session where I have this new state of the code update. Give it these different roles, right? I don't know if you need to necessarily tell it, hey, you're in this role, but you can also do this if you want to build a more automated system or like an agentic system that will do some of this. Hey, you're the architect, you're the QA tester, you're the teacher. But it does help, I think at times, either explicitly telling it these roles or telling it that's what you're looking for right now. Like, hey, I am looking for you to be an architect, or I'm looking for you to be a teacher. Because sometimes if you just ask it questions, it'll just go off and start coding. It's like, oh, no, I don't want you to code yet. You've seen me say that in some of these sessions that I do, where I'll tell it, no, just be conceptual for now and we'll code later, but like just let's talk about it. Let's talk about what we're building. And then once we get to the end of talking about it, then I'll let you code. But sometimes it wants to code. And I do think it's useful. Like not everything has to be like intently focused. Sometimes you can go into more of an exploration mode, right? Where you're just trying to figure things out. You can let the LLMs riff, as this is saying, and then tighten it up with tests. Like let's try to figure some things out. Let's see where we can take this. Don't aim for perfection at first. I think that's a good idea here. That's why we have POC, right? Proof of concept, MVP, minimum viable product, right? That's what you want to get to. First, prove that the concept works on some level, then figure out what your MVP is, and then get to your MVP and be happy, and then start testing and pilot testing, and then coming up with a set of features that you want to add in your next version. You work on only those features, and then you go and you go and you go. If you try to go for perfection for your project at first, it is not going to go well for you, most likely. And try to enjoy the process as much as the product. Like if you are hating this process the whole time, that's not great for you, right? There is a way to make this more enjoyable, to have a better flow, and maybe take breaks, or again, like get into more of a conversation with your LLM than just letting it lead you down the wrong paths. So simple start, Start with simple ideas, do setup and roadmap, use AI as a partner, and then curiosity and teamwork. Stay curious, work as a team. And I feel like if you follow a lot of this stuff that I was bringing up here, this is a much better philosophy and sort of set of guidelines than just like, hey, let's start vibe coding stuff in my IDE and hopefully it'll work out. So hopefully that was somewhat useful. Have it write your tests, give you way more confidence the code works. Absolutely. Have it write your tests. Oh, okay. Aaron is big on Git, but I've had nightmares when team members delete my code unknowing when trying to revert. Yes. So like recursion, reversions, they suck. I think that's one of the things where I mean, I get, and it depends on the size of the projects and how you're doing them, but if you guys are going to start deploying, then Git is going to become more of your life. But if you're starting off on your vibe coding journey, you don't have to get into Git just yet. Is vibe testing okay, or should we write the test? No. So yeah, Barry, have AI write the tests for you. It is very good at that. I think it's the easy way to pick up versions of code for projects and keeping track of various code blocks should a user want to revert back to it. Yeah, but you can also just like save all those files. I mean, I think it depends, right? Git is a solution, and if you want to start doing Git, then I think that I'm not going to say don't do Git. Take a look at it, try it out, or you can just back up your files you want if you want. And because Git is, I guess, Arnett and Aaron and Alex, like all of you guys, and maybe some of the other folks on here who I'm not aware of, you're a little bit more technical than some of the people who are getting into vibe coding, right? And so I would just say you don't necessarily need to start getting them into Git yet. But if you are new to vibe coding and you want to try it out, give it a try. If you like it, stick with it. If it's getting a little bit confusing for you, then just back up the versions of your files yourself. Like you could just copy your folder of files, paste it somewhere else, say version 1, boom, all your files are there. But as Arnett is saying, if you are familiar with Git and you're fine with it and there are no issues, then Git is good. I just Git goblins, or like as Aaron was bringing up, people reverting your code like kind of sucks when you have to do it. Do you have to learn Python with this? You don't have to learn everything about Python, but like you should be learning some Python along the way. We are 2 minutes over. I love talking about vibe coding. I will see everybody on Monday. If anybody vibe codes anything over the weekend, come in on Monday and tell us what you got. I will see you then. Have fun with AI and automation. You're welcome, everyone. Bye.